The town waited for a decision it did not want to make. People talked in low voices, eyes on the ground, afraid to look at the pen at the end of the yard. A black bull stood there, muscles tight, breath slow and rough. A sign on the fence said, "Final evaluation, today." No one said what that meant out loud. Mothers held their children's hands. Reporters whispered. The air felt heavy like the moment before rain. If anyone had listened closely, they would have noticed something stranger than fear. The bull kept watching the gate as if he expected someone small to walk through it. They had brought Titan to the facility after 3 bad incidents in 2 months. Doors had been checked. Barriers had been tested. Workers had kept their distance. "He looked calm for years," said the vet in a tired voice. Then he started charging at noise, at crowds, at anything that buzzed. The staff believed there was no safe plan left. Papers were ready. A man from the county said, "We follow the order by evening." People nodded without meeting his eyes. I stood near the rail with a notebook and asked the handler, "Was he always like this?" The handler shook his head. "He used to eat from a kid's palm," he said. Then he woke one day and hated sound. Someone in the crowd muttered, "Some animals just turn." Another voice replied, "Or something turned them." Titan stamped once, then stopped as if he had heard a voice that no one else heard. The handler frowned. "That was odd," he said. A girl tugged her aunt's sleeve near the entrance. She was about 8, hair tied back, eyes sharp as flint. The aunt signed to her, patient and quick. The girl did not look at the people. She watched the bull. Titan watched her back. "Ma'am, you can't be here," a staffer said, trying to move them away. The aunt signed again, then spoke for the girl. "She wanted to see him," the aunt said. "She said he was hurting inside." The staffer started to argue, but the handler lifted a hand. Titan had gone still. Not tense, still like a held breath. The girl pressed her palms to the glass. She did not speak. Her throat moved a little, like she made a soft hum only she could feel. Titan lowered his head, not in fear, not in anger, but in a way that asked a question. The yard, the crowd, the papers, everything waited on that quiet. The handler whispered to the vet, "He's calm again. Just like before the fair incident." The vet nodded slowly, watching Titan's head tilt toward the glass where the girl's hands rested. The crowd outside didn't know what to think. Some raised phones to record, others just stared, unsure if this was a calm before another storm. "Get her away from the glass," the officer said firmly. "It's not safe." But before anyone could move, Titan made a low sound, not a growl, not anger, something like a call from deep inside him. The little girl smiled faintly. She couldn't hear it, but she felt it. Her aunt spoke softly to the vet. "She says he's hurting. She says the noise makes him crazy." The vet frowned. "What noise?" The aunt translated the signs. "All of it, machines shouting, trucks. She says he wants quiet." The officer sighed. "That's just guesswork." The vet hesitated. "Or maybe it's not." She remembered the pattern. Titan attacked only when noise was high. "Let her stay for a moment," she said quietly. "Watch him." Titan lowered his massive head, almost pressing it to the glass. The girl mimicked him, pressing her forehead to her palms. Her small frame trembled slightly. The vet's monitor blinked green. "His heart rate is slowing," she murmured. "He's calmer than I've seen him in months." The officer rubbed his forehead. "This makes no sense." The vet whispered, "Maybe it's not supposed to." The handler whispered to the crowd, "Maybe she speaks his kind of silence." Someone laughed nervously. The girl moved her fingers again, slow, gentle shapes. The aunt translated for the vet. "She says he remembers something sharp, something behind his ear." The vet blinked. "We didn't see any injury there." The aunt shrugged. "She says he feels it. Like metal." The handler said, "That's impossible." Still, curiosity replaced fear. The vet asked quietly, "Can you show me where?" The aunt relayed the question. The girl pointed behind her own ear and nodded firmly. The vet looked toward the officer. "Give me a minute before you sign anything," she said. "If there's something real here, we'll know soon enough." The officer sighed but didn't stop her. The girl kept her palms on the glass and the bull stayed perfectly still. The air seemed to wait. For the first time, everyone's anger, protest, and noise faded into a deep, strange silence. Dr. Mitchell took a step closer to the reinforced glass, her eyes narrowing as she studied the spot the little girl had pointed to. Titan's massive head remained pressed against the transparent barrier, his breath slow and warm, fogging up the glass. "Behind the ear, you said?" she murmured. The aunt nodded, signing the question to the girl, who repeated the gesture with absolute certainty. She says yes. Metal. Bang. Long time, the ant translated. The sheriff folded his arms, skeptical but curious. Doctor, you're not actually going to believe this kid, are you? Dr. Mitchell didn't answer right away. Sheriff, you saw what I saw. He's calm, almost gentle. That's not fear. That's trust. I've been doing this for 20 years. I've never seen anything like it. The sheriff frowned. You're suggesting the bull's been suffering from, what, a piece of metal in his head? The vet nodded slightly. It's possible. We ran standard scans before, but we only focused on the major organs. We didn't check deeper around the ears. The handler leaned closer to the panel. If she's right, that means he wasn't violent for no reason. The sheriff grunted. Or it means we're chasing a child's story because we don't want to feel guilty. But the vet wasn't listening anymore. Her eyes were on Titan's steady gaze. The bull's expression was no longer wild. It looked almost pleading. Maya suddenly pulled her hands from the glass and began signing rapidly, her movements more urgent now. She says he can hear the loud pain coming, her aunt said breathlessly. Something outside hurts him again. Everyone turned to the yard beyond the fence. An approaching truck, its diesel engine growling. The sheriff waved at the driver to turn it off. The sound died and Titan immediately relaxed again. The vet's breath caught. Noise sensitivity, she whispered. Every time the world gets loud, his pain explodes. That's why he charged people. It wasn't anger, it was agony. The handler muttered. Then what are we doing here? We're punishing him for something he couldn't control. The sheriff stared at the child, who stood quietly, eyes closed, her fingers resting once again against the glass. She's feeling what he feels, the aunt said softly. She says he's been asking for help for months, but no one could hear him. For the first time that morning, the sheriff didn't argue. He just whispered, then maybe today we finally listen. The sheriff walked toward the vet, lowering his voice. How much time do we have before they come for him? Dr. Mitchell checked her watch. About 15 minutes, she said. They'll expect him ready. Her tone carried the weight of finality, but her eyes stayed on the little girl who now traced soft shapes on the glass, her fingers moving like she was drawing invisible lines only the bull could read. The crowd outside had gone quiet. No one shouted anymore. The cameras were still rolling, but even the reporters whispered now, afraid to disturb whatever fragile peace had filled the air. Maya kept her eyes fixed on Titan. He leaned forward again, pressing his forehead against the same spot, his huge body trembling not with anger this time but exhaustion. He's tired, the aunt translated. He says the pain won't let him sleep. He just wants it gone. Dr. Mitchell felt her throat tighten. Ask her if she can show me where it hurts, she said quietly. Maya nodded before the question was even finished. She pointed behind her own left ear, then motioned toward the bull again. Same place, the aunt whispered. Left side. The sheriff looked toward the vet. You're thinking what I'm thinking, he said. We have no proof yet. Dr. Mitchell sighed. If we sedate him we could check, but the order doesn't give me permission. It's a scheduled euthanasia, not a treatment. She hesitated. But if that child is right, killing him would be an execution of an innocent creature. Maya looked up suddenly, her hands flying in urgent signs. The aunt gasped and spoke quickly. She says she can show you. But she needs to be inside with him. The sheriff froze. Inside? He repeated, incredulous. Absolutely not. That's a 2,000-pound animal that's crushed fences. The vet hesitated, torn between rules and instinct. Maya's calm gaze didn't waver. She's not afraid, the aunt whispered. She says he won't hurt her because he knows she understands. The sheriff paced, his boots crunching on the gravel floor. If we let her in and something happens, it's over for all of us, he muttered. But if we don't and she's right, he looked at Titan again at how still the bull remained, waiting for the girl's next move. Dr. Mitchell finally said softly, Sheriff, maybe this isn't about science. Maybe it's about trust. He met her eyes, then looked toward the child standing quietly at the gate. Trust, he repeated as if testing the word. That's not something we give easily anymore. The decision hung in the air like a storm cloud. No one wanted to say it first, but everyone felt it, the pull between fear and faith. The sheriff rubbed his neck, glancing once more at the calm bull and the small girl who refused to step back. Finally he let out a long breath. If this goes wrong I'll take the blame, he said quietly. But if it goes right, maybe we'll learn something about mercy. He motioned to the handler. Open the outer gate halfway. No one else goes in. Just the vet and the girl. The crowd gasped softly. Dr. Mitchell hesitated, then nodded. We'll move slow, she said. No sudden sounds. She turned to the ant. Tell her to keep her hands where he can see them at all times. The ant signed carefully, her fingers trembling. Maya nodded once and stepped forward. The sound of the metal latch sliding open echoed across the yard, sharp and final. Titan lifted his head, his ears twitching, but he didn't move. Everyone froze as Maya entered the pen. Her small shoes pressed softly into the dirt, each step measured, fearless. The bull's breath came in low, heavy bursts, but his eyes followed her with a strange gentleness. Dr. Mitchell stood a few feet behind, whispering under her breath, "Steady, Titan, steady." Maya stopped an arm's length away from his head. She raised both hands slowly and pressed her palms to the spot behind his left ear. For a moment nothing happened. The crowd held its breath. Then Titan let out a deep, rumbling exhale that rolled through the space like thunder under the earth. His massive frame relaxed, his knees lowering slightly as if a weight had fallen off him. The sheriff whispered, "He's kneeling." The vet's voice shook. "He's surrendering." Maya's fingers traced small circles on the rough hide, her lips moving soundlessly. Titan's eyes half closed. The ant signed quietly, translating the signs she recognized. "She's telling him it's almost over. That he's safe now." The handler murmured, "Look at that," like he understands every word. The vet took one careful step closer, crouching beside Maya. "Can you feel anything?" she asked softly. The girl nodded, tapping the side of Titan's neck, then behind his ear again. Her signs came faster. "Something sharp," the ant said. "Something stuck deep. Metal." Dr. Mitchell's eyes widened. So she was right. Titan stayed still, breathing slow and calm. Maya didn't look afraid, not even once. The sheriff finally whispered, "If this is true, then that girl just saved his life." Dr. Mitchell's hands shook as she lifted the small examination light from her kit. "Stay beside him," she whispered to Maya. "Keep doing what you're doing." The bull's massive chest rose and fell in rhythm with the girl's soft vibrations. She was humming, not with sound but with her throat, the way someone deaf feels rather than hears. The air itself seemed to respond. Titan's muscles loosened more and the vet dared to move closer. The sheriff watched from the fence, every muscle tight. "You sure about this?" he called softly. "One wrong move and—" "He's not going to hurt her," the vet interrupted, her voice steady but quiet. "He trusts her. I've seen animals go feral, but I've never seen one surrender like this." She knelt beside Titan's huge head and parted the fur near his ear. "Hold the light here," she said to the handler, who hesitated before obeying. Titan flinched once when the beam touched his skin. Maya immediately pressed her palm firmer against the glass-smooth area of his cheek, her other hand moving gently over his temple. The bull stilled again, breathing low and steady. "Good boy," the vet whispered. "Just a little more." Then she saw it, a small, dark line under the skin, barely visible but metallic in color. "There," she breathed. "Behind the ear canal." She didn't look up, her focus absolute. "It's a piece of wire, maybe fencing. It must have been there for months." The sheriff leaned forward. "How did you miss that before?" "We scanned his skull and spine, not the soft tissue near the ear," Dr. Mitchell said, guilt tightening her words. "We assumed his aggression was behavioral. We were wrong." Maya started signing again, sharp, quick gestures. Her aunt's voice shook as she translated. "She says the pain screams inside his head every time there's noise. She says he thought the world was trying to hurt him." The handler looked away, his jaw tight. "And we blamed him for defending himself." Dr. Mitchell turned toward the sheriff. "We need to remove it now before infection spreads to the brain." The sheriff exhaled slowly. "Do what you have to do, doctor." He looked at the girl, then at the bull. "And God help us if we're too late." Titan blinked, eyes soft and wet. Maya leaned forward until her forehead rested gently against his skin. For the first time since anyone could remember, the great bull closed his eyes completely, as if he finally trusted the world to be quiet. Dr. Mitchell prepared her tools on a small metal tray, each instrument clinking softly in the tense silence. The sound made Titan twitch, so she quickly wrapped the handles in gauze to soften the noise. "No sudden sounds," she reminded everyone. Maya was still kneeling by the bull's head, her hands never leaving his skin. The child's calmness was astonishing. Even the sheriff, hardened by years of difficult duty, couldn't look away. "He's watching her," the handler whispered. "Like he's waiting for permission." Dr. Mitchell nodded. "Maybe he is." She cleaned the area behind Titan's ear with gentle strokes, whispering words that weren't meant to soothe but to keep her own nerves steady. "You're doing fine, Titan. Just fine." Maya's aunt stood outside the pen, translating the girl's small hand movements into whispers. She says he knows you're helping. He's not scared anymore. The vet found the exact spot again, a faint swelling just beneath the surface, darkened from old infection. She glanced at the sheriff. If I make a small incision, I might reach it. It's risky, but not as risky as leaving it there. He nodded, though his face was pale. Do it. Dr. Mitchell took a slow breath and pressed the scalpel to the skin. Titan tensed, his muscles rippling, but before anyone could move, Maya placed both palms firmly on his face, humming again in that low, steady vibration. Titan's body relaxed instantly, his breathing deepening, his huge chest rising like a sigh. It's working, the vet murmured. She's keeping him still. She worked carefully, her fingers moving with precision. The seconds felt like hours. Then, with a soft metallic scrape, the tip of something foreign glinted under the light. There it is, she whispered. Using tweezers, she pulled out a jagged, blood-stained piece of wire no bigger than 2 inches long. The moment it came free, Titan exhaled sharply and went completely still. The crowd gasped. Maya froze, her eyes locked on the bull's face. For a few heartbeats, no one moved or breathed. Then Titan's ears twitched, and he lifted his head slightly, almost brushing the girl's shoulder with his muzzle. His eyes looked clear, soft, not wild. The sheriff whispered, "He's different." Maya smiled faintly, her fingers moving slowly. Her aunt translated through tears. She says he's saying thank you. Dr. Mitchell looked down at the piece of metal in her hand. This, she said softly, was the monster everyone feared. The air inside the pen felt lighter, almost sacred. For a moment, nobody spoke. The sheriff looked at the jagged wire lying in Dr. Mitchell's palm, its edge dark with dried blood. That tiny thing caused all this? He asked quietly. The vet nodded, still staring at it. Every loud noise must have felt like an explosion inside his skull, she said. He wasn't attacking people, Sheriff. He was trying to escape the pain. Outside, the crowd watched in stunned silence. Reporters who had come for a headline now stood still, their cameras forgotten. Maya gently stroked Titan's face, her fingers tracing the lines of dried tears on his fur. The bull lowered his head until it nearly touched the ground, a gesture of peace that none of them could mistake. He's not angry anymore, the aunt whispered. She says he feels free. Dr. Mitchell checked his pulse and smiled faintly. Stable. Completely normal. She looked at the sheriff. We can't go through with the order. Not after this. The sheriff exhaled, shoulders heavy. I'll take the heat, he said. Let the state fire me if they want. Maya sat cross-legged beside Titan, her small hand resting on his massive jaw. Titan's breathing was calm, his eyes blinking slowly. The vet placed a hand over her heart and said softly, "It's like he understands she saved him." From outside the fence, one of the protesters called out, "What's happening in there?" Is he calm? The sheriff walked to the gate and shouted back, "He's alive. And he's staying that way." The words were met with murmurs of disbelief and then applause that rippled through the crowd. Some people cried, others simply stared in awe at the sight of a bull once condemned now resting peacefully beside a deaf child. Dr. Mitchell crouched beside Maya. "You did something none of us could," she said gently. "How did you know?" Maya lifted her hands and signed slowly, her expression serene. Her aunt translated, "She says she didn't know. She just listened." The vet smiled faintly. "Listened?" she repeated, her voice trembling. "The girl who can't hear listened better than all of us." Titan shifted his weight, pressing his head against Maya's shoulder. She laughed silently, her body shaking with pure joy. The bull's eyes softened, and for the first time in months, he looked truly at peace. The sheriff turned toward the crowd. "I guess some miracles don't need words," he said. By late afternoon, the sun hung low over the facility, turning the concrete yard golden. Titan stood quietly in his pen, his head resting near Maya's shoulder as if afraid to break the spell. The reporters had started their live feeds again, this time with voices full of wonder instead of fear. "The bull once labeled dangerous has been spared," one of them said. "And the hero is an 8-year-old deaf girl who somehow understood what no one else could." Dr. Mitchell cleaned her instruments, still glancing toward the pair every few seconds. "I should take him to the recovery barn soon," she said softly. "He needs rest and antibiotics." The sheriff nodded. "Do it your way, Document. No more orders from the county until I say so." He looked at the bull again and shook his head slowly. "It's strange. He looks grateful." Maya's aunt kneeled beside her niece, signing slowly. "We should go now, Maya. They'll take care of him." but Maya didn't move. She placed her palm gently on Titan's forehead, closing her eyes. Her lips moved in that faint vibration again. When she pulled her hand back, she signed something small, almost like a secret. Her aunt hesitated before whispering, "She says he's thanking you. And he says the world is quiet now." The vet smiled through tears. "He deserves that peace." She touched the bull's neck, feeling the slow, steady rhythm beneath her hand. "You were never the monster they said you were you, boy?" Outside, the same people who had shouted for Titan's death were now clapping softly, many of them in tears. One woman, Mrs. Henderson, the lady who had been injured before, stepped forward and whispered, "I don't blame him anymore. If he was in pain like that, I'd have lashed out too." The sheriff looked at her, surprised. "You mean that?" She nodded. "We judged him too fast. That little girl showed us something we forgot. Sometimes pain looks like anger." Maya stood then, brushing the dirt from her dress. Titan followed her movement with his eyes. The vet unlocked the small gate leading to the open paddock. "Let him walk a little," she said quietly. The sheriff frowned but didn't object. The gate swung open. Titan hesitated only a second before stepping into the fading light. His steps were slow, cautious, but not fearful. Maya followed him to the edge of the yard, smiling silently. The bull turned once, lowering his head as if to bow to her. The sheriff whispered, "That's not an animal gesture. That's respect." The sound of applause faded into quiet awe as Titan took his first few free steps into the open field behind the facility. His hooves sank softly into the damp soil, the evening light catching the smooth sheen of his black coat. For months, this same animal had terrified an entire town. Now he moved like a creature reborn, slow, gentle, almost shy. Maya followed him until the sheriff gently placed a hand on her shoulder. "You did more than any of us could," he said. "He trusts you now. That means he's safe." Maya smiled faintly, her eyes still fixed on Titan. She signed something small and quick. Her aunt translated softly, "She says he's asking if he'll have to leave again." Dr. Mitchell's voice broke as she said, "No, sweetheart. Not anymore. We'll find him a sanctuary where he can heal." The sheriff nodded. "I'll call the judge myself. We'll file a stay of order. No one's hurting that bull again." He looked down at the wire still resting on the vet's tray. All this, because of something smaller than a coin. The handler wiped his eyes with his sleeve. "Guess it doesn't take much to change everything, just someone willing to listen." Maya knelt near Titan again, her small hands brushing the dirt near his hooves. The bull lowered his head until it rested lightly against her knees. For a moment, it looked like he was hugging her. The crowd behind the fence gasped softly, phones rising to capture the sight. But even through the distance, the silence remained sacred. No one wanted to break it with words. Dr. Mitchell whispered to the sheriff, "Do you think she really understood him, or was it something else?" The sheriff shook his head slowly. "I don't think it matters. Whatever it was, it worked. Maybe real communication isn't about hearing, it's about feeling." Maya stood again, pressing her palms together and giving a tiny bow toward Titan. The bull mirrored the movement by lowering his head once more, then took a few more steps into the fading light. The vet turned to the sheriff. "When people hear this story, they'll think it's a miracle." The sheriff smiled faintly. "Maybe it is. Or maybe it's just what happens when someone finally listens to what's been screaming in silence all along." As the sun disappeared beyond the trees, Titan lifted his head toward the quiet horizon. The world at last had stopped hurting. The next morning, news spread like wildfire. Every television station, newspaper, and social media page carried the story of the bull that was supposed to die, and the deaf child who saved him. Reporters called it a miracle of empathy. Scientists debated it. People in coffee shops whispered about it. But for those who had been there, no explanation felt big enough to describe what they'd seen. At the facility, Titan stood peacefully in the soft morning light, chewing hay with calm eyes. The once fearful staff now moved around him without flinching. Dr. Mitchell leaned on the fence, watching as Maya approached again, holding a small red apple in both hands. She couldn't hear the clicks of the cameras behind her, or the murmur of reporters beyond the gate, but Titan noticed the sound. His ears twitched. Then, seeing the girl, he relaxed instantly. She smiled and held out the apple. Titan took it gently from her palm, his lips brushing her fingers. "He remembers," Dr. Mitchell whispered. "He knows she's the one who helped him." The sheriff nodded, his voice low. "Maybe we should all remember what she did." Maya signed something small and quick. Her aunt, standing nearby, translated, "She says he feels happy. He says everything is quiet inside now." The vet smiled. Then we did right. The sheriff looked at the wire fragment sealed inside a plastic bag on the table. That tiny piece caused months of fear, he said quietly. It turned kindness into rage, peace into pain. He looked at Maya. But she saw the truth when the rest of us saw only danger. Outside the pen, townspeople who had once called Titan a monster now brought flowers and hay to the gate. Children waved from behind the fence, laughing as Titan sniffed their hands. One old farmer wiped his eyes and said, "Guess that little girl taught us we can't fix what we don't try to understand." Dr. Mitchell turned to the sheriff. "What happens now?" He smiled faintly. "He'll go to the Cedar Sanctuary. They've already agreed to take him. Maya can visit any time she wants." The vet looked back at the child and the bull standing together in the morning light, two beings who had shared silence and turned it into peace. "The world needs more people like her," she said softly. "People who listen without words." Maya smiled again, her small hand resting on Titan's head. The bull closed his eyes and leaned in, calm and safe. Weeks passed, and the story of Titan and Maya traveled far beyond Cedar Rapids. People around the world shared the video of the moment a deaf child stopped a raging bull with nothing but compassion. Schools used it as a lesson on empathy. Animal sanctuaries hung her photo beside Titan's. The sheriff received hundreds of letters, some thanking him for believing, others admitting they had once judged too quickly. But the truest reminder of that day wasn't in the headlines, it was in the quiet friendship between a girl who could not hear and a bull who had finally stopped hurting. One bright afternoon, Maya visited Titan's new home at Cedar Sanctuary. The field stretched wide, filled with green grass and open sky. Titan grazed calmly among other animals, no longer locked behind concrete walls. When Maya arrived, he lifted his head at once, recognizing her even from a distance. The moment she stepped closer, he trotted forward, gentle, careful, and lowered his head for her to touch. She placed her palms against his face just as she had the first time. This time there was no fear, no trembling, only stillness. Dr. Mitchell stood by the fence, tears glistening in her eyes. "He's healed," she said softly. The sheriff nodded. "And maybe we all are, a little." Maya signed a few small words. Her aunt smiled and translated for the vet and sheriff. "She says he's happy now. He says the world doesn't shout anymore." The sheriff looked at her for a long moment before saying quietly, "I think he's right." The bull turned back toward the open field, his black coat glimmering in the sunlight. The wind moved through the grass, whispering softly, but neither Titan nor Maya seemed to notice. They were at peace, two souls who had understood each other beyond words. As they walked back toward the gate, the sheriff said, "I keep thinking about what happened that day. We almost destroyed something good because we refused to listen." Dr. Mitchell replied, "Pain often hides behind anger, Sheriff. That's true for people too." He nodded slowly. "Maybe that's the real lesson." Maya turned around one last time and waved to Titan. The bull lifted his head and let out a long, low sound, not loud, not fierce, but gentle, like gratitude carried on the wind. Moral lesson. Sometimes the loudest cries are silent ones. Pain often looks like anger, and healing begins when someone chooses to listen with the heart instead of the ears.